In this video, we'll be looking at how to set up a multimedia server with a database MySQL backend. Basically what that means is we can have a nicely organized piece of software which displays all of the music, TV shows, movies, other content, other multimedia content we have in a nice form. So for example, if it was a movie, that it will get the poster for it and information about the movie. On top of that, it keeps things like state of play. So for example, if you've watched half of the movie already, it remembers that, and when you go back, you can continue from where you left off. It also marks what you've watched previously. So if you're watching a TV show, you can actually watch or maintain a list of basically how far you are in the show, because that's something I would have frequently forgotten myself in the past when using DVDs. Okay, so for this, what you are going to need is a folder of applications. Basically, you can download them for free yourself from the internet, but to save you the hassle, I've provided a folder of all the content we're going to use. We're going to have to do a little bit of extra work because of the fact we're using virtual machines, but some of the stuff we're going to do with the virtual computers to get them up to scratch will also help with other things. Okay, so one of the first things you want to do is you want to log into your server, because we're going to use the server to store the database, and the database is basically going to be all of the data for our media server. So all the information about the shows, all of the watch states, all of that sort of stuff is going to be stored on a database. And you don't actually have to do that. You can just do it locally, as in you can install the software, which we'll do on the XP computer in a little bit. But the advantage of this is if you had more than one XBMC set up in your house, so for example you had one in the sitting room, one in the bedroom, you could watch half of a movie in the sitting room, go to the bedroom, press resume, and it would continue from where you left off. Also, it would remember what episodes you'd watch, so if you're halfway through a show, you could go to another room and continue the show from where you left off as well. So it just means that it's centrally managed, and no matter how many instances you have in the place, you can use them. Now we're going to use Windows Server as our back-end operating system, but the truth is it doesn't have to be. So for example, I run XBMC, Kodi as it's called now, along with the database software on my Windows 10 PC that's in my office, and I can then use that in my sitting room, in my kitchen, in the garage, wherever I want. And it's just using Windows 10. So all the steps here are not specific to Windows Server. We're just using it because it's kind of designed for databases and stuff like that. So it's just handy to latch on to what we've already got set up from our previous tutorials. Okay, so the first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to get the software we need onto the machines. And since they don't have an internet connection, that limits how we can do that. Okay, but VirtualBox does have a really nice feature that lets us achieve that. And to do that, what you have to do is you have to go back to the VirtualBox manager and right click on your virtual machine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on Windows Server and go to Settings, then go to the tab that's called Share Folders. And basically what this lets us do is it lets us use a folder with whatever we want in it from the actual computer. Okay, so basically, you've taken a copy of this folder, you've put it on the desktop or the C drive or wherever it happens to be of the actual computer. We're now going to pass that through to the virtual one. To do that, we click on the plus folder icon on the right hand side, and now it asks you to put the folder path in. So what you can do is you can click on Other, and it'll bring up my computer, and you can basically locate the file. I know where mine is stored, so I'm just going to refer to it by name, which is N, and it's server. Just double check the name here. It's media server, excuse me. Okay, so I made a folder called media server on my N drive. I'm going to say it's auto mount and make permanent, and OK that, and click OK. Now that should be connected on your server now, but you might notice it's missing. So there's two reasons for that. Firstly, for this to work, you must have VirtualBox Additions installed. So if you need to install that, you can look back to video 0 where it's actually discussed. But if you go up to Devices and insert Guest Edition CD, it should pop up. If not, go to My Computer, go into that and look for VB or VBox Windows Editions and start that program and go through the steps and restart your computer afterwards. Also, quite often the folders do not mount unless you restart your computer first. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to restart my server by going to Shutdown and Restart, and I'll just say that it is hardware maintenance. Saves me typing anything else in. Okay. So my server's now restarting. Let's go do this on our XP machine as well, because it's going to need a few files as well. Okay, so open up your XP computer, and what we're going to do is we're going to log into it locally, but we actually have to do something else. We have to be in safe mode to do one of the steps that comes up now. So I'm going to restart this computer, but first I'm going to add that folder in as well. So to do that there, find it in your list of virtual machines, right click, settings, shared folders, and same as before, N media server. So that'll be different for yourself, obviously. So wherever you save the file, and of course you can browse to it. And then OK and OK. Okay, so to get my XP machine ready, what I need to do is I need to install the VirtualBox guest editions, but I need to have support for what's called DirectX. Okay, and the reason for that is that DirectX is used for displaying graphics and for playing sound and for reading input, and playing movies and stuff like that counts as video, as graphics. So we need DirectX support. So to do that, we need to do two steps. First of all, we need to turn off our XP machine, 100% turned off. So if I Control-Alt-Delete this, I should have the option to shut down, and I'm going to shut it down fully. Okay, so once that's shut down, I'm going to go back to this menu again, and we're going to go back to settings, but this time we're going to look at the settings that are called display. So basically, if you want to have good graphics on your VirtualBox, so for example, if you want to use your virtual machine to play old games that aren't supported by modern versions of Windows, you can do that, but you have to do a few setting changes. So that's why this is useful outside of what we're doing right now. So to do that there, you go to display on the settings tab and click enable 3D acceleration, enable 2D video acceleration, and jack that up high. Okay, so what I just did there is I also increased the memory amount, if you see there, up to full. So 3D and 2D graphics accelerated. We're going to need that because it's, as I say, it's a game, so, or it's a multimedia application, so it needs video acceleration to play video. Okay, so that's now the XP machine ready in terms of the VirtualBox configuration, but we still need to do the guest additions. So start up your XP again, but before you do, get ready to press F8. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start it up, and as it's starting up, I'm going to start tapping the F8 key on my keyboard. As you can see, I'm just tapping F8. Oh, right, so I had a disk inserted. That doesn't help. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove that disk, remove disk, and restart the machine. And I'm going to do the same again, F8. And you see what it brings up is the option to go into safe mode on the computer. And that's a very useful option to know, because if your computer's not working properly, you might have to go into safe mode where it only loads basic drivers, and inside of that then you should be able to remove any faulty drivers and install better or working ones. Okay, so I'm going to go into safe mode, and the reason why is if I want to install a driver for DirectX support with the VirtualBox editions, I know that's a long statement, I need to be in safe mode. That's just a requirement for it. So I'm going to log into the machine now in safe mode using the administrator password. So that's password1 with a capital P for me. And it's asked me, are you sure you want to run in safe mode? The answer is yes. Next, what we need to do is we need to insert that disk. Okay, so to do that, go up to devices at the top of the XP VirtualBox window and click on insert guest edition CD image. And with that done, you should be able to go to start. Oh, wait, it's loaded automatically. Okay, so that's even better. So it's opened up, and all you need to do is go next, next. But here's the important part. See where it says direct 3D support experimental? We need to tick that. And basically, if you tick that and you're in Windows without safe mode, it'll tell you, sorry, you can't run this in normal mode, you must be in safe mode. So that's why we had to boot into safe mode there. So I'm going to click install now, and that's going to install our VirtualBox guest editions with support for DirectX. So continue anyway, continue anyway, continue anyway, and reboot machine. Okay, so while that's rebooting, what we're going to do is we're going to go and actually set up our SQL server. So that's a database server. What this means is we can basically put a database up available on the network. So that could be inside our own personal network, or it could be on the internet. So for example, when you log into a website and you type in your username and password, that's usually checking a web server's database. So we're setting up the equivalent of that, and it's useful to know how to do that outside of this tutorial as well. So I'm going to log into my server now as administrator. And what should hopefully appear now is if I go to Start and My Computer is the folder that I said I wanted shared. So if you see there, the folder I said I wanted available from the actual computer onto the virtual one is showing Media Server on VBox Server. So if I go into that, you should see all the applications which I've given you: DirectX, Advanced Settings, MySQL, and XBMC. The purpose of each will become clear as we go through this, but to start off, what you need to do is copy the MySQL one and just paste that on the desktop. Okay, and with that pasted onto the desktop, you should be able to double click on it to run the installer for the MySQL SQL server. And the great thing about MySQL is that it's free. You do have to register on the Oracle website to get it, but otherwise it's free, and registration is free itself. Okay, so if we just give this a moment now to start up the install for the first time, we'll run through the install from MySQL. We also have to do a few bits of configuration for the MySQL, but I'll provide a document with all commands you need, and also we'll be typing them in as the video goes along, so you should be able to get those. And sadly, because there's quite a bit of data in this installer, it takes a moment the first time around to actually open up. So while that's working away, I'm just going to go, oh, there we go. I don't even have to go and do anything else. Perfect. Okay, so with the setup now up and ready, we're going to click on Next, accept the license agreement. And we're just going to use typical install because the typical install is more than enough for us. And then install. So that's now going to install the MySQL server on this computer. It'll take another couple of moments for that to actually complete. And while that's working away, I'm just going to go back to my XP computer and log into it. And what I want you to do is log in locally. We don't need to be on the domain for this to work. So just log in with your local administrator account. So to do that, go to the login to or log on to option here. And from the drop down list, choose the option that says this computer. And then hopefully your password is password1 with a capital P as well. Okay, so our XP machine is now ready for everything to be installed. And what I'm going to do while this is installing is I'm going to firstly go to Properties, Settings, and increase the graphic size to about 1152.864. Okay, apply that. It makes the window much bigger and easier to work with, which is good when you're trying to watch a movie. So do that, right click and go to Properties, Settings, and then Screen Resolution, choose a bigger number. If it's too big, reduce the number and try again. Okay, and I'm just going to check on my server. You can see that's now finished the install. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to click Next, Next, and launch the Instance Configuration Wizard. So this will let us set up our specific SQL server that we're doing, but we're going to do a very basic setup on this as well. So click on Next, and just click on Standard Configuration. That's more than enough for us. And leave the default, install as a Windows service, yes. Now this is important. You have to specify a password which you will need to remember. I'm going to use password1 with a capital P again. Just so I remember it. Of course you can use anything else, but you must remember what it is, because whenever we go to configure this and use it later on, you're going to need that password. So then click Next, and then Execute should run through all of the configuration and have this ready to use. So it's now writing and applying security settings, and hopefully this will finish up, and there we go. So that's now our SQL server installed. We now just need to do a little bit of configuration on it, and that means running 2 lines of code. Okay, so to do this, if you go to the Start menu on all programs, you should now see MySQL listed as an installed application. As I say, this is not just for media servers, this is for many, many different uses. If you're making a website and you want to log in, you're going to need to do the same thing as well. So go over that Start, all programs, MySQL, and MySQL 5.5 command line client. When that opens up, it'll ask you for the password. That's whatever password you specified in the previous step, which should be password1 with a capital P. And now we're in and we're free to run what's called SQL commands. This lets us actually configure databases, use databases. So if I type, for example, show databases with a semicolon at the end, it lists all of the databases currently on this machine. And as you can see, that's information schema, MySQL, performance schema, and test. We're not going to worry about any of those, but it's just we're going to run this command later to see if anything's been added in. Okay, so here's the important commands we need to run for XBMC, or Kodi as it's called now, to work correctly. We must firstly make a user for it to use. And to do that, we type the command create user. And notice how I'm using capital letters. Whenever you're typing commands, you generally use capital letters, but for names, you use lowercase. And then we use a single quote, type the word Kodi. And the truth is, the reason we're using Kodi is because it's just useful as a name, and that's what the modern version of this software is called. You could use anything else, but later on in your advanced settings, you must make sure that the name and the password match. And then we're going to say identified by, and then a space and a single quote again, Kodi. And to explain, that's the username, Kodi, and the password is also Kodi. So identified by actually means the password. And then end the statement with a semicolon and press the return key, and it should say query OK, 0 rows affected. And that's now that user created. What we now need to do is grant permission to access all resources to that user, and that'll be all commands we need to actually run properly. So to do that there, we need to say grant all on, and then star.star. And what star.star means is wildcard.wildcard, or in simple terms, everything. So grant all on everything that's here to Kodi. And then a semicolon at the end. So that means the user, Kodi, has full permissions for everything. Which is what we want. We want the software we're about to install in XP to actually have control of everything. Alright, so that should now be our database fully configured and ready to roll. What we need is a piece of software to actually use it, which is where our XBMC, which as it says renamed Kodi, comes in. So if we go back to our XP computer, we'll do that now. So go to Start in My Computer, and you should hopefully have that shared folder here as well. Just have to give this a moment to actually open up. So there we go, Media Server on VBox. And we're now going to copy XBMC and DirectX. Right click and go copy to the desktop. And basically we need DirectX, which is used for games and multimedia, installed before we do anything else. So to do that, just go into the folder for DirectX and scroll down until you find the installer called DX Setup. Double click on it, click I accept agreement, and click next and next, and that will now install DirectX. So if you were trying to run games on this, you will also need to install DirectX, and that's what that folder is for. It's all the files needed for DirectX to work properly. This will once again take a moment because it's an install with a number of different files. I think there's about 100 megabytes of files actually here. But as I say, this is used for 3D graphics, 2D graphics, audio, game controller input, all of that sort of stuff. So any type of game, or if you're trying to run a Windows 95 or Windows XP only game, that's how you're going to have to get DirectX installed. So if you click on finish, that's now DirectX ready. And we're now going to move on to actually installing the main software, which is XBMC, which you'll see is the other installer we copied onto the desktop. So double clicking on that should start the installer. We should be able to click on next, I agree, and we can just leave default, all languages, all skins. So there's going to be only one there, Confluence, which looks really crap, but it's very easy to add new ones. And we're going to need the Visual C++ 2008 redistributable, so just leave that ticked as well. So basically just leave everything as default and click next, next, and install. And that's now installing XBMC or Kodi. So it's really, really straightforward. And what I'm going to do now is once this is installed, I'm going to try and run it. But I will point out this is set up as local only. So if you wanted this to communicate with other computers and have a centralized database for managing the information, what we're going to have now is not quite ready. We're nearly there, but we're not quite. Okay, and that's just installing the Visual C++ redistributable at the moment. Once that's done, Kodi should be ready to run. I'm just trying to run DirectX as well. So there is a DirectX with this, but the one we have is the full version, and it's just better to have the full version with all of the libraries you might possibly need. Okay, so it just takes a moment for the two of those to finish installing, but now that it's done, we should be able to tick on Run XBMC and finish. And fingers crossed, this will start up, and there we go. We're now on the main screen for XBMC. And we can now choose any of these options and add content. Okay, so if I go into videos, you can see there's an add source option, and we could then add content. Okay, so that's basically your XBMC local install ready. What we're going to do now is we're going to do the connection to the database, and I'm also going to create a shared folder, because the truth is, if you've got a shared database, you're probably going to store all of your music, your TV shows, your movies in some sort of central location as well, which means making a shared folder. So do that there. I'm going to go back to my server, and I'm just going to go start my computer and see, and I'm just going to go right click and go new folder and say movies. There we go. And then right click and properties and sharing, and share this folder. And we're not going to put a $sign because that'll make it hard to find. And the truth is, if it's a folder of movies, you probably don't want to hide it anyway. All we're going to do is we're going to go into permissions and say full control, because it could be useful to be able to add movies from outside of the main machine as well. Of course, if you didn't want your little brother or something accessing the content, you could make a different user account and make it that they have read-only access, and then they'll not be able to use the content unless you let them. So everyone, all access, okay. There's now a shared folder to put all our movies in, and of course there's no movies in there right now, but it's very easy for you to do that yourself. I'm sure you can work that step out on your own. Now back to our XP machine, we're going to actually set up the connection to the database, and to do that we're going to use the final file we have in our folder, which is advanced settings. Okay, so I've provided one for you, and I'm going to show you where to put it and then also how to modify it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on it and click copy, and then I'm going to go to start, my computer, and local disk, and you see it says show the contents of this folder. Yes. And we're going to go to documents and settings. Now what I will say is, as default, XBMC is set up individually on every user account, and that can be good and bad. One advantage of it is that if you wanted to have, say, one database, one set of information for the children in the house and another one for the adults, you could do it by basically having a different user account on the machine. And also if you just have two people and you want to not have, when you watch, say, Game of Thrones, that the other person's watched list says that they've watched those episodes and they could be behind you. Alright, so I'm logged in currently as the administrator. So that means I'm going to go to C, Documents and Settings, and Administrator. And the folder we need is actually missing right now. So here's another tip of something that's important to be able to do on a computer, and that is how to show hidden files and folders. And to do that, there we go up to Tools and go to Folder Options. And this is the exact same on Windows 7, 8 and 10 as well. We go to View, and from this list go down until you find the option Hidden Files and Folders, and click the radio button that says Show Hidden Files and Folders. Then when you click Apply, you should see that that list gets a lot longer in the background, so click OK. And what we're looking for is Application Data, which has been renamed App Data in later versions of Windows. When we go into this, we should see a list of different applications, and you can see XBMC is present. If you're using a later version of Windows, you might see a folder called Roaming instead. Go in there and you'll find your XBMC, and if you're using a later version of XBMC, you might find one called Kodi instead. So instead of XBMC, it could be called Kodi. So there's a number of different options, just depends on what you're actually using, but we're going to go into the XBMC folder, look for the folder called User Data, and right click and paste that file in here. Okay, so that's now set up all the information for connecting to a database on our XP machine for Kodi. But we may need to change this information. So to do that, we can right click on the file and go to Open With, and we can choose Notepad. And what you'll see here is the name of, or the type of database, which is a MySQL, which is what we installed, the address of the server. So if you're not sure what that is, go to your server and go Start, Command Prompt, and type ipconfig in, and it should be listed there. As you can see, the address here is 192.168.0.1, which does match what's shown here, 192.168.0.1. The port number, that should be fine as default, and then you should see the username and pass. The username and pass is what we entered earlier whenever we used the create user Kodi identified by Kodi command. If you typed a different username and password in whenever doing that, you might want to change those values. And then similarly, you'll see address, name, and name. Because it treats the music database and the video database as two separate entities, you have to set it up twice. So everything here is perfect as is, but if it's not, you can change it, then click save, and that should be ready. Okay, so it's now time to test our connection and see if XBMC is connecting to that and if all is working right. So to do that, we go to Start and we go to All Programs and we look for XBMC or Kodi, and you should see the program there, and we should be able to now click on it to run it. Now, because it's the very first time connecting to this database, it has to now connect to the database and create all entries that it needs, all the tables, all of the content in those tables. So this does take 20-30 seconds first time around, but second time around it should be much faster. Okay, so that's now in. And what we need to do is we need to check to see if this is actually successfully connecting to our database. And to do that, we're going to go back to our server. We're going to go back to our command line client. And just in case you close it, I'm going to show you this from scratch. Start, All Programs, MySQL, MySQL Server 5.5, MySQL 5.5 command line, open. So type the password again, password 1. And I'm just going to type in show databases. That's the command we typed in earlier. with a semicolon at the end. Press return, and what you should see now is an extra 2 databases. So can you see there, there's my music 7 and my videos 34.db. That means that Kodi is, or XBMC is successfully connecting to this centralized database, which means it's working perfectly. So if I was to add content on this machine or this XP machine and then move to a different computer in the house, that information would be shown in that one as long as I put the same advanced settings file in. And that means also Kodi and XBMC work on Windows, they work on Linux, they work on Android, they work on iOS as long as you've got a jailbroken iOS device, and they also work on OS X. So pretty much any device in your house is capable of running this, which means if you've got an Android phone or tablet, you could also connect this to the same database and have all your information on, say, your main PC in the house and watch your TV shows on your tablet in the kitchen or anywhere else, as long as you're connected to the same Wi-Fi. So that should hopefully open up a lot of possibilities to you. A lot of people find this quite useful at home. So this tutorial is not just for education's sake, it's actually something that people here might find quite useful. Okay, so one last thing I'm going to show you is how to add content. We don't actually have any content yet, which does make this slightly difficult, but I'll show you the steps anyway. So if you remember earlier on the server, we created a folder called movies. We're now going to add that as a source. So to do that there, I'm going to click on this option called videos and find the option called add source. Okay, and what we need to do now is we need to tell it where that folder is located. So to do that, we click on the browse option and go down through the list until you find the options called Windows Server or Windows Network SMB. That just means we want to, instead of connecting to a folder on the local machine, which we could do, say if you've got a music folder on your PC, you can connect it straight in here. But if you want to connect to a network share, go down to Windows Network. It should now list all devices on your network. So DD server is where I created that, and it should create all shared folders that are located there as well. And you can see movies is listed there. So if I click into that and go OK, it's now going to ask me, once I click OK again, what sort of content is stored in here. And if I could click these arrows, I can just say this is movies, automatically scan and search. So basically this is now going to use the MovieDB, which is a database of movie information. You can check out that website yourself, themoviedb.org. You'll see it's got all sorts of information for all sorts of movies, including posters, release dates, who starred in the movie, what year it came out. Even information about the actors is linked there as well. So it's a great place to find information about movies. Once you click OK, that's now added. Of course, to say there is actually no movies stored in there right now. So if I click on it, you see there's nothing. But if I had, there would be, all my movies would have scraped, as it's called, and been added in here with posters and everything. As I say, the default skin on this looks quite ugly, but if you go into System, Add-ons, and Get Add-ons, it's not going to open now because I don't have internet connection, but it would have an option called Skins there, and you can choose any number of different appearances and layouts, which look much better than this. The one I would suggest using is the Aeon Nox skin, because it gives you a lot of really nice features and a really pretty layout. As I say, I can't install it here right now, but you can try that yourself if you want to give this a go at home. The steps might change slightly, but 99% of this should be the same. So I hope this video has been useful and that the steps were easy enough to follow. I know there's quite a few steps, but we did set up a database server. We did set up a media server. We set up DirectX for support for old games and everything else. So this is a very much a packed video with a lot of content in it, which could be quite useful for yourself. So I hope it has been useful and that these steps do come in useful.